Hey guys, it's me, RSB Studios. I'm back with another long video. Now, this is a continuation to Age of Empires. Obviously, that video I made a while ago about if you guys remember this video, you might, if you guys watched it, you might remember. Basically, it's about what if all nations rejoin their older empires, like how India was once part of the British Empire. If it rejoins it, how the US get divided again, like how the US was a part of all three of these empires: the Spanish, the French, and the British. Then what if then Brazil if it rejoins Portugal and stuff like that. But anyways, let's get back to it. And these are the coalitions of the allies that were formed. So yeah, let's get back to it. So anyways, we had last stopped with France completely getting annihilated by all these other nations nearby it. And because of what its allies have seen, they decided to just start a coalition war against one of these one particular nation. If you see, then you'll realize what I'm talking about. But basically Belgium. Because Belgium is the weak. Sorry, not Belgium. I mean, yeah, basically Belgium. Because Belgium is the weakest of these four. Because Germany has claimed a lot of this Russian land and some of this Chinese land. Japan also has a lot of Chinese land. So it's better if they just go for Belgium. So now how it will go is like this. One sec. Yeah. So France has this economic zone where all French people can live. And then Italy's right here. So Italy will start sending in troops. And they'll be given French passports and they'll be sent into France, this region. Those troops will move out of France and will start invading this new Belgium land, and they will get this much part of the territory until Belgium eventually decides to start stopping them. And because it has big, and because it has a very big army by now, it just comes in and takes up the economic zone as well because they never liked the economic zone idea as it was right just next to their border. Britain realizes what's going on, and Britain also decides to invade, but by now it's too late because there's a lot of French revolution that starts in all these regions and eventually spreads out towards most of this in all these regions. It even starts in these German regions, but Germany wants to suppress those parts. But Germany cannot suppress this region because it's mostly originally France. And in this way, they even lose Belgium because Belgium is taken completely away by the French Revolution that started here. And this is how France reclaims all this land, along with extra German land, which it eventually loses. And now seeing this double front that Germany might have to face in the future, Russia decides to also start some pay some rebels, and they start rebellions in this land, and eventually comes into a fully fledged conflict. The Germans trying to suppress it, but they can't. Eventually, they all band together. All these rebels just band together, and they have a pretty big front against the Germans. And seeing this, that it might be game over for Germany in this Russian land, they decide to just give it independence or give it back. They keep thinking the parliament keeps thinking, what are they gonna do now? Will they just give it back, or are they supposed to give it independence? And seeing how big the rebellions are, they just decide to give it back to Russia. So they have a deal with Russia in which all this land is given back to Russia. And Russia is pretty pleased that they managed to get the land back. And they even get this much land back. So that's how Germany ends up losing all this war. Basically, all these nations end up losing it. And now Belgium is also gone. Belgium not gone. Belgium starts its empire here again, along with help from the British and Germans. They get protection there. Then they start their own empire here as well. And they do take some French land eventually. They take this part from France and keep it with them. But France eventually gets all land back. But just so that, but because they anger the British so much, the British just decide to invade and take out their lands from southern China. No, I mean only southern China. I mean China. Yeah, and then they even take the island of Hainan. So now, because Indochina is left, they decide to strike a deal with Britain. They decide to strike a deal with everyone in this coalition: Britain, Japan, Germany, and Belgium. That they get a treaty of peace because they want to stop for the meanwhile, and that happens. Now, Portugal, being alone with the Netherlands, Portugal and the Netherlands, they decide to band together because they're practically alone at the moment, and they want to invade somebody, but they're pretty confused who to invade because all the other powers are pretty strong. But when they realize that there's so much empty land nearby, they decide to go and claim for the empty land because all these nations are empty. So, like for example, Portugal sends an expedition up here and takes all this land away from these empty lands from Africa, which means they're not empty, but they aren't really claimed by anybody either. And the Netherlands also decided to take up Denmark. I've got no idea why Switzerland is unmarked, but it's definitely mixed up between all three nations. So I'll have to cut it up there. I've got no idea why I left Switzerland so unmarked. I'll just quickly mark this up. And when Russia sees what's going on, they also eye of the empty land and they move in with a quick force and just cut this off from all from the rest of the world so that they can easily claim more land. Yeah, and that's how it goes for them. And seeing this angers Germany. So Germany decides to talk to the whole coalition again, and they're thinking of starting a coalition war with only Russia, not getting France or Italy or Spain involved in the coalition war, but only with Russia. Before they start this, Germany would have to get some practice and invades Denmark, basically the basically the Dutch controlled Denmark, and take it away from them. And then when they're ready, they just go for this. Basically, Germany starts as usual with taking out this part of the map. Check what's going on. Yeah, it's supposed to work right now. Yeah. So they started taking this land. Then Britain makes a couple of landings as well. One landing they make is on this part of Norway. Then they make another push up north and claim this part of the Russian territory. And they cut it off from Turkey. One sec. I have no idea what's going on, but it's not working out. I don't know why. I'll just quickly fix this. I suppose it should work right now. Yes. They take this land away from Russia and cut it off from Turkey. And then Germany also quickly cuts it off even more from the Black Sea. And they've officially lost access to the Black Sea. Now again back to Norway, what the British were doing in Norway. They went up and cut off Russia from this part. Basically Norway and Sweden. So Russia wouldn't have much access to that part of the world. And they're really wishing that um their enemies, basically Russian allies, don't join in the war. But the Russian allies don't join the war because they're busy building up their own army. So eyeing out this part of land, Japan takes it. And with that, Russia asks for a treaty of peace. And in this way, Russia is given peace and they don't go to war for many years because they're busy building up the economy and armies. They can go and back and take their land eventually. But moving on, Britain decides to see the Arabian Peninsula. But there's another enemy of Britain seeing it, Italy. So Italy also decides to claim land. Italy takes this part of land, basically Yemen and Oman. Meanwhile, Britain takes out the UAE and Saudi Arabia. They don't really do any treaty here, so they just take whatever they want. And seeing the Balkans, again, Germany and Italy both see the Balkans. So they both decide to just intervene with each other. They go to war against each other. They don't go to war against each other, sorry. They just claim whatever land they want. Like basically they try to take, basically Italy tries to take away Turkey and Greece, but the rebels, they don't let them. With them Britain being superior, basically being a more powerful country, invades Turkey, and along with that comes the downfall of Turkey. And becomes a British member. And then they also go ahead and try to invade Greece. And then before they can get a chance to, Italy just stops by and takes it. And Italy also decides to take out Cyprus for some reason. And Spain also sends an expedition outwards just to see if there's any empty land. And it goes pretty well. They try to send a ship which can go and try to take British land, but it doesn't go to Britain. It just goes up instead. And another one also goes up, and they both end up crashing into Iceland and Greenland. And they just take it. They don't care. Even though the these basically Greenland is barren land, they still just take it. Meanwhile, after seeing how the world is advancing, Portugal and the Netherlands also decide to join a coalition. But they're confused which one to join because they're both allies and they don't want to become enemies. So they decide to become neutral for the meanwhile and don't go to war with anyone. So that nobody can declare war on them either. Now France is quite wants vengeance. They want to take back their old land. That's where they start a little conquest. And they go do pretty well for the meanwhile until they get to the border with Germany. And Germany sees this and push them back severely, pushes them back to around here. Eventually, Britain also intervenes because this was originally British land, and Britain decides to push them out from here. And then the war stops. Now, rebels just suddenly pop out of this region because they want to, because Belgium wants its land, its original land back, and France has no choice but to surrender to the rebels. And this is the new Belgium kingdom. And the same thing happened in Germany. The Netherlands really wants its land back that was taken. So they start rebelling on this part of the land, on this part, and then more rebels start here. The rebels in Denmark are crushed, but the rebels in the mainland cannot be crushed. That's why that land is given to the Netherlands. I'll just clear the map a little bit because the map is looking very weird right now. Some nations who were originally independent start wanting their independence back. So they start rebellions. Like Arabia and Turkey want their independence back, and so do Yemen and Oman. But the rebels are sadly crushed and end up losing the war of independence. Now, randomly, the economies of Bhutan and um, Nepal randomly collapse, and Britain takes it as an opportunity and claims the land. And again, now somehow a war breaks out between Portugal and France, with Portugal taking out French land from here. And also they take out Madagascar because Madagascar has a lesser security. And they stop after Spain threatens them with war because they have just got a direct border and they don't want to get into war. But this makes Britain send them an invite to join the coalition because if they've seen how well they did against France, they decided to give them an invite to join the war. I mean, they basically give them an invite to join against France, and gladly they take it. They gladly take the invite and they just join. But now this leaves the Netherlands confused because the Netherlands doesn't want to become an enemy of Portugal, and they also request entry into the coalition, and they're allowed entry. I'll just make this small. I don't know if I remember the size I used last time, but I'll just try to remember which size I used. I may have used 14 or 16, I don't remember. I think I used 14. I don't know. Yeah, so that's that. Two new members have joined in the coalition. And basically all of the members of this world have been added into the coalition now. And I'm seeing this Spain decides that Spain is a bit worried now of what will happen next. And this coalition is to talk. In this meanwhile time, Russia has built up a very strong army, ready to take back their old land, and they decide to ask the coalition if it's ready. The coalition tells them not to do any such movements because they failed many times before in war, and just to send in rebels. So now again, rebels start out, here, here, along the old border and stuff. These rebels can't be suppressed again because it's not easy for them to suppress the rebels. So they begin out again in this region, mostly Siberia. Sakhalin has one rebel, but that rebel is also suppressed. And seeing this, without war, the land is just given back. Because the land is basically, practically most of this land is worthless, except oil. So the oil is taken and it's just given its independence back to Russia once again. This land keeps on giving, is kept, I mean, keeps on getting a back and forth. That's the only thing that Russia is doing. They're only taking the land and giving it back. Not giving, but it's just being taken from. So the oil is collected and just this land is just given back to Russia. Basically given back to the rebels, and the rebels just give back to Russia. However, Germany managed to suppress the rebels, but it still decides to give back some of the land so that it doesn't face such attacks again. They basically strike a deal with Russia and give it back with this much land. Now, Britain, on the other hand, is not ready to. Britain wants to keep the land they have or even gain more. That's why they won't give back the territory even though there are so many rebels. And this is what Russia knows about. That's why they increase the amount of rebels that they're sending into Britain. And seeing that more than half of the country, more than half of the parts of this part of the country is infested with rebels, they just decide to give back. But they also strike a deal in which they can claim these southern parts of Norway and Sweden. Something you might have been waiting for a while now. What's gonna happen in the Americas? Like in the Americas, nothing has happened till now. Nothing much. So which is why I'll show you guys what happens now. Britain starts pushing in south because it wants to take back this. It wants to keep all the Americas with itself. It doesn't want to give it to France or Spain. They keep pushing down until they get to this place where Spain also has some influence. And Spain helps France. France sells its land to Spain. And after doing this, after this deal is made, Spain, because it has an upper hand from the south, it just pushes up north, taking all this land from Britain. And it takes out most of the south in this way. And it basically, I mean, like, because there are families that live in this area, it easily manages to take back some of it. Some of them, basically, Mexico's old borders are reclaimed. And yeah, this is how it will look for now. And Russia also had some rebels in Alaska, which eventually take out all of Alaska. Yeah. And even though the French were kicked out a while ago, the French also decided to start their own little rebellion up in Quebec, which wanted to be independent from Anglo people for a long time. So it does. And it eventually manages to win that. And this part of land secedes for good. Why is the whole thing freezing? Give me a second, guys, please. Yeah. Now Britain looks in a tough space over here, but it's not in such a tough space because while all this was happening in the Americas, something is happening in Asia. Germany pushes them out of continental Asia for good. Basically, Germany pushes the French out of continental Asia for good, and the British push out Italy from the Arabian Peninsula, and Spain gets kicked out by the Dutch and British. Basically, not the Dutch and British, but the Dutch and the German and the Japanese. And now Spain is officially kicked out. So it's basically a stalemate for now. Anyways, this is the end of this video. When the stalemate is broken, I'll let you guys know and I'll make another video. But yeah, this is part 2 coming to an end. Thank you guys for watching and please subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much.